Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Teens for Business podcast. I'm your host, Kyron.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Ivan.
And today we'll be discussing the electric vehicle industry, including recent car companies' earnings and what that shows for the growth of EVs. Just to start off, are you guys personally fans of electric vehicles? Like thinking down the line, let's say like after college when you're buying your first car, would you rather own an EV or a gas car?
Yeah, well, maybe I'm personally a bit biased due to where I live, but definitely, uh, there is probably a personal favoritism towards EVs rather than gas vehicles because, um, where I live, I don't know where else in, like maybe Jack can talk more about where he lives, but where Kaiwan and I live, there's a ton of support for EVs simply because, where Tesla is located here, but also like California very supports EV development. So they give you like carpool, like you get to freely use the carpool lane, etc. Like, so definitely if I get first car, probably will consider EVs or hybrid, like probably a hybrid, not EV, who knows. But EVs have a better like they're smoother. Like for gas, like obviously there's a climate side that you don't want to impact the climate, but for EVs, they're generally smoother and the design philosophy is typically, a little bit on the sleeker side. Like there's typically more technologies in EVs rather to compare like all the comfort wise. Um, that is more accessible. Like obviously gas cars also do have it, but gas cars the most focus is on the engine, while in EVs, I think it's more geared towards, comfort and for the price point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not the same situation in the Illinois and Midwest when we compare it to California. Like California obviously supports a lot of EV development. I bet there's a lot of like Tesla supercharging areas that are in California. In the Midwest, it's pretty different. There's still a lot of EVs around, especially in the Chicago area because it's a big city, but normally they don't get the support as much as the California cars do. So I obviously have a little bit of a different opinion here. I do like the concept of electric vehicles and how they're definitely more environmentally sustainable and they are more smoother when they drive. Like they accelerate like a little bit faster than those normal gas vehicles. But just because I haven't had a lot of experience with them, and especially because I haven't seen them as much in person when driving around or being driven around, like I wouldn't c- buy an EV yet because I feel like I guess in my area at least the concept is still a little bit raw. And also the fact that EVs are kind of expensive for the price point that is offered in my area. But I think definitely in the future, if there's more innovation and more development in like the areas where I live in or wherever area I live in, maybe I move to California or San Francisco one day. But basically, what I think is like potentially if there's more EV development, more EV innovation in ways that are more relevant to me in the future, definitely getting an EV car in the future is definitely on the cards.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it de kind of depends where you are and like what you're using it for. I think I've seen like the main complaint about EVs. It's kind of like the charging is going to take a while compared to just like putting gas in your tank. You got to charge it and leave it there for hours. And especially if there aren't, you're in an area where there aren't a lot of like Tesla chargers around where you can charge your EV, then you're kind of it's just not very it's like not very flexible for you as a car owner. And I know especially for California, it's not going to be like 5 years, but by 2035 I think they're banning the sale of gas cars entirely. So it's we're shifting towards like an EV dominated market, and I think that's what Elon Musk is trying to capitalize off of right now as well. But in terms of like the general industry right now, in terms of other car companies, Ford actually recently released their earnings, and they actually reported a staggering loss on every single electric vehicle model that they're selling. So they reported a $1.3 billion loss, which amounts to $132,000 per electric vehicle sold during the first 3 months of 2024. And the company basically saw a 20% decrease in sales volume. And because of low demand for the EVs across the entire industry, they were forced to slash the prices of its electric vehicle offerings, What do you guys think this is because? Is this like a reflection of like the, I guess, demand for EVs kind of slowing down here in 2024, or is it just because Ford isn't kind of hasn't established himself in the EV market yet? What do you think this is because?
Well, I think it's a kind of a mix of both because I don't think it's like the EV market slowing down per chance, but it's more of the entire car market is slowing down because recently I feel like the economy in general is not doing so well, especially the cars. Like not a lot of people are getting new cars in the context of today's economy, right? So I don't think it's like EVs in general. I feel like it's cars in general, and because EV is such a new concept, they are the first ones to get hit by an economic downturn. Like the people who stop buying new stuff are the first person to hit are the people who buy EV cars. um and I personally feel like Ford actually does have, because they're a very big name. Obviously they're one of the biggest car manufacturers in America, right? It's just not enough for companies compared to like Tesla, right? Because Tesla is purely an electric EV car manufacturer, and it has dominated, in different countries such as China as well. While Ford has barely reached other countries and only has markets in basically America. So that's another point because like Tesla has, grown to the face of EVs, and they're point of reference for EVs in various countries like Japan, China, Korea. Like these people companies are building EVs because Tesla started building EVs. But Ford is just one of those people who are bandwagoning off of those EV because first of all, government regulations, like government's definitely favoring EVs over gas cars. Second of all, is because people in general just I think are moving towards EVs because based on comfort and safety. Also, I forgot to mention safety. Like EV cars, granted that the battery doesn't blow up, are safer than traditional gas cars. So like people are just gravitating towards EVs more so, but Ford is just riding the wave. So they are going to be the first manufacturers to get impacted by an economic slowdown, and I don't think necessarily it's because EVs are going out of taste.
Yeah, I definitely predict that EVs will continue to grow in the future, and I think the car market in general will transition to more EV based and potentially maybe a little bit more self-driving based, which we may discuss in the next question, which relates to Tesla. But I do feel like this is more of a reflection of the overall EV or overall car market in general, rather than because Ford isn't a big name yet, because Ford is a pretty big name in the car market as a whole. And Ford isn't actually the only company to scale back on EV production. And like other big companies like General Motors, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, and even Tesla have had to delay or reduce their EV production in one way or another. And like definitely EVs are still growing. And it's definitely projected that EVs will like take over like the car market within like several years, like 10 or like 20 so years. Like I think right now like there's like consumer demand is kind of low for EVs, or maybe in some cases in cars just general. And because of that, like, and they're also, we have to take into account that EVs, like there's are a lot of different factor costs that go into building each EV, and usually those are more expensive than building like a gas car. Like for example, like yeah, each EV needs like to support a lithium battery. It also needs a lot of like different earth materials and elements like aluminum that need to be used to like produce and configure like the electricity that goes on, the electric system that goes on to in each like EV. And also we discussed earlier in the first question that charging availability is could also play a role in cost. So I think due to these like different like results, like Ford and other companies like that are producing EVs are kind of sort of slowing their production down just to reevaluate their financial models to see what is really feasible for them to maintain profitability while also maintaining a still somewhat strong position in the EV market so that they are well prepared for the long-term transition to EV cars rather than gas cars.
Yeah, definitely. I just think that it's kind of key like that Ford is continuing to double down on their EV production despite the fact that they're losing money. They're losing a ton of money right now, but even despite that, they're still choosing to like kind of increase their production, aiming to make more affordable EVs, which is kind of where Ford is trying to capture the market of more affordable, being more affordable than Tesla. So all these car companies are kind of they kind of know where the economy is going in terms of the transition to EVs, which is why they want to get ahead of it, even if that means taking losses in the beginning, because in the future it's definitely going to be more and more people are going to buy EVs, whether that be like full EVs or hybrids. But they're just gonna it just is it's a slow transition, but these companies are trying to get ahead of the curve here. Let's talk about the main EV maker, Tesla. Last week they reported earnings and they shot up 9% on positive guidance, but they did report sales and earnings that were below expectations. So revenue declined from 23.33 billion a year earlier and from 25.17 billion in the fourth quarter. And net income dropped 55% to 1.13 billion or 34 cents a share from 2.51 billion or 73 cents a share a year ago. So Tesla is another victim of kind of I guess the entire market slowing down here in the first quarter of 2024. But why do you think Tesla stock is still doing well? Actually today it shot up more than like 15%. I think it was off the news that China kind of gave them FSD approval. But I guess why do you think Tesla is doing kind of making a bounce back here despite the stock kind of suffering in the first couple months?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point because Tesla this year has not been doing very well, and as because I think it's one of the largest companies in technology sector, but it has been lacking as compared to other companies such as Amazon, Apple, Meta. Like those companies, they have grown quite substantially as compared to Tesla. And I think the reason why, like Kaiwen has touched upon, like China gave them are in talks with Tesla over their features on like self-driving. So that's definitely one of the biggest role because I feel like Elon Musk, this at least recently, has been a very big proponent on how good the Tesla self-driving capabilities are, and Tesla's self-driving capabilities are fundamentally different from other like Kevin and I like if we step 3 feet out of our house, you probably see a self-driving car. I don't know about Jack, but when we go out, we see like those cars, and it's very obvious it's self-driving because they have the very ugly I think it's like ultrasound or infrared sensor on top of the roofs that rotates around, sending beams of to measure whatever, right? And then they also have various apparatus around the cars, and it's very obvious that car is self-driving. But Tesla, on the other hand, they don't have that. They depend specifically on cameras, and obviously there has been very scrutiny. Like there's reasons why like a lot of the self-driving companies don't use cameras. It's because cameras don't tell like the full information, right? So Tesla depending only on cameras is a very innovative and different unorthodox way of self-driving. And Elon Musk has been, riding that wave because like for Tesla, you can't tell if it's self-driving or not, right? But for other cars, it's very obvious. And so Elon Musk has, I think, in my opinion, rode on this wave to say that this is the future of self-driving by combining it with technological buzzwords such as like AI, deep learning, right? So, and Elon Musk, I think recently also told everyone that people who have a Tesla will get like a free trial of their full self-driving mode, um, if it ever gets approved in the US. And I think is getting approved in China. So that like he is this confident to say that every single Tesla driver could use that full driving mode, right? So he's very confident about this technology, and that's why I feel like investors have also been more confident in Tesla in general because Tesla has been a very fast growing company, and recently there hasn't been many major breakthroughs. Like they had like their Cybertruck, and then it was kind of a disaster, and it still is kind of a disaster. But saying that full drive self-driving mode is so good and that every Tesla driver could test it out for like 2 months is shows that Elon Musk is confident in his company and in his technology, and also shows to investors that they should invest in his money, because if it does happen, then Tesla, as a company, will become an even larger EV manufacturer.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of what Ivan said. I want to d dive deeper into a little bit of like the AI and deep learning that Ivan mentioned. Like, I feel like over the past like 1.5 years or something, the major stocks that we see that are doing well, they're always in the news, they're always like always rising, are a lot of things that are AI related. Like Nvidia, AMD, TSMC have been all like rising significantly over like the past few months. And although like maybe in the past month or so, like April, late March maybe hasn't been doing as well as it did like before, but it's obvious that like those stocks have been like doing well. And other stocks that are following this AI trend have also been doing really well. And like we can see that with Meta. And now that Tesla has gotten approval to do like something like that is related to self-driving, which obviously probably incorporates some sort of AI somewhere, that obviously follows a really positive trend uh, that is related to AI. And as a result, I think Tesla's stock is going to rise. And it obviously did today. So we can definitely see that AI is that the growth in AI could definitely be associated with the growth of self-driving in general. And due to like some of the AI things that we've seen over the past 1.5 years, like as Ivan said, like Elon Musk's confidence in like the self-driving has grown significantly. Like Tesla is still like a leader in self-driving. You see that all over California. Unfortunately, we don't see that much in Illinois, but based off of what Ivan and Kevin have been saying, it's probably very popular there. So Tesla is obviously switching its attention to self-driving and also like more very AI focused in the future. And I think this could be a very profitable path in the future. And this has obviously gotten investors very excited. Now, going back to like a little bit of a point about EVs, I think so Tesla's obviously a leader in the EV car industry, and none of its I'd argue that none of its competitors have EVs that are more efficient than Tesla's. And also Tesla also governs like that supercharger network. And and it's basically what that is. It's basically they have those chargers around and you can just drive and charge your cars whenever they're out of battery. And those charging stations are all like all over the world. So those two components combined obviously make Tesla really well positioned in like for a long-term transition to EV like cars, potentially even more well positioned than other companies that I talked about before, like General Motors and Ford. And as a result, I think it is possible that they could take a little bit of a loss, but right now, but the long-term profitability also has a lot of investors excited, which probably is a reason why there's still a lot of people stoked about what Tesla's going to do in the future. And my last point about why Tesla is like why people are why people think that Tesla is going to keep doing well going into potentially the next few months or year or so is that they're starting to prepare those like cyber trucks and cyber vans that they've been long teasing for release. And we obviously know how the hype and the FOMO behind those two vehicles. We discussed in an episode I think a few episodes ago, like we discussed the Cybertruck and some of the things around that. Guys should probably check that out if you haven't done so already. But there's still a lot of FOMO around it, even though there are some issues that we did point out in that episode. So that FOMO also has like investors in a way somewhat excited by potentially the the sales that they can generate from those from selling the Cybertruck and the Cybervan, which also definitely contributes to why why a lot of people think that Tesla is doing well, even though their EV car sales aren't doing as well as they did last year.
Yeah, just to add on really quickly, I think the main thing with like looking at a company stock going up or down, um the reaction to their earnings reports has, I think this year notably has kind of changed. It's like despite their like earnings or their sales for the previous quarter, it's more important what their guidance is for the future. Based on for whether the stock goes up or down, because we've seen companies like Tesla report like super bad earnings where they've taken huge losses and they've been forced to cut prices. But because in their report they've kind of highlighted how they're proceeding by with plans to make more affordable EVs, continuing to increase production instead of slow production, and that leads to the stock going up 10%. Whereas a company could report like positive sales and earnings, but report poor guidance for the future, like lack of sales, and you see that stock tumbling down. It just kind of shows that like these companies, they're what the market is valuing is their future growth and their future kind of development more so than what they done previously in the quarter. So I think that's been reflected through all these EV companies and their earnings because they've all lost a lot of money in 2024, but they've been growing a decent amount. Even with Tesla losing a lot of money, they've still they've started going back on that uptrend. So I think that's kind of something to look out for. But yeah, that's it for today. So thank you guys so much for tuning in with us, and we'll hope you will join us next time on Teens for Business as well. Thank you.